This app was built in a very similar way to the demo that switched map types that you saw earlier on. If you aren't familiar with the layout and Gradle and manifest configurations, check back to that video. But I'm going to show them a little bit here. First, you can see in my build.gradle file, I've added the services library that gives me access to the Maps SDK. Then in Android Manifest, I've added my OpenGL stuff, and I've added the user's permission stuff for internet, access network state, and write external storage. I've also added the metadata for the services libraries here. And then finally, I've added the API key configuration here. Now remember, every time you create a new application on Maps, you're going to have to configure the API key on your Google Developers Console. So for example, as you can see here, here's my API key that I'm using in the application. And because I've called my map com.google.devplat.elmoroni.maps33, I also have to have a setting for it in the Android applications using the SHA-1 key for my debug certificate, followed by a semicolon, followed by the app name. So you should see a list of them here. And if you recall the apps that we've been building as we go along in the course, I've been adding them here, and that's why they're actually working. Okay, let's take a look at the layout next. And here you can see in the layout, I've done the same as I did in the earlier application. I have a vertical linear layout, and the first child of that is a horizontal linear layout. This horizontal linear layout contains 3 buttons. These buttons are button Seattle, button Tokyo, and button Dublin. I've just set their text to be the names of the cities. I've hard-coded the text in this case. It might make more sense to put that into a strings.xml in a real application. And then the second child, here's the end of the horizontal linear layout. So the second child of the vertical linear layout, of course, is the maps fragment. And here's just the standard maps fragment setting, where it's a com.google.android.gms.maps.map fragment. So as you can see, the layout is virtually identical to the layout that we had earlier on in the application that allowed you to switch the different map types. Now let's take a look at the source code in the main activity. Here you can see the main activity, and I've created 4 camera positions: New York, Seattle, Dublin, and Tokyo. Of course, I'm only using Seattle, Dublin, and Tokyo, but I've put New York in here in case you want to build the application using New York. And here with the latitude and longitude that I had showed in the slides for New York, for Seattle, and for Dublin. And if you didn't find out your own for Tokyo, here it is for you. And this is available in the speaker notes, this source code. So these are constant camera positions that I've created for the names of the 4 cities. Then in my onCreate, I just wire up the button handlers. And I only had buttons for Seattle, Dublin, and Tokyo. So in each one of these, on the onClick, I'm going to call this helper method that I wrote called flyTo. And it's flyTo the city name. So if you click the Seattle button, fly to Seattle. If you click the Dublin button, fly to Dublin. If you click the Tokyo button, you fly to Tokyo. And then to look at the flyTo helper method, you can see it here. And here's where I call the animate camera. So on my map, I'm animating the camera update factory.newPosition target. And remember, a parameter passed into flyTo is a camera position target. So when I said fly to Seattle, I'm just flying to the camera position that I called Seattle. I'm taking 10 seconds to do it, which is the 10,000 milliseconds here. And then I'm just doing a null, so when the animation's complete, I'm not going to trigger anything. And one thing to note with Android apps that use maps, as you saw when I demoed earlier, as the camera flies across the map, it doesn't slow down by downloading the tiles in between your cities. So sometimes you'll see emptiness. When I manually panned around the map in the areas between the cities, further transitions after that looked a lot cleaner because we were seeing the places in between. Because while I manually panned, I was caching those tiles. Now that we have a good feeling for how maps work and we've seen how to build cameras to determine how we view the map, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about markers.